Welcome to the Bronx Journal. I'm your guest host, Denis Schwuchow. Are you aware of the music that is playing in the movies you're watching? Do you realize the emotional effect this music is having on you? Many people do not, but in fact, music has played an important role in film almost from the time movies began. Sometimes, it is the soundtrack that makes us remember some of our favorite movie moments. Here to talk about film scoring is composer and professor Michael Bacon. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dennis. Nice to be here.
No problem. So, Michael, what is film scoring exactly? Because I'm sure some people are thinking film and scoring are two words that go together. Score might refer to sports. But what is exactly film scoring?
Well, the process of film scoring is writing music to accompany a picture, moving picture. And it's really an art that's only been around for about 100 years, the same way film has been. So when film scoring really started, it was, you would have a big, loud camera, and you might be watching a horse running across the picture. And in order to make the experience a little less grim, and that big camera and all the noise, they would get a little musical group to cover up the noise and make the experience more than just watching pictures go by. So this is late 1800s. So as it progressed and eventually they were able to synchronize music and film, and film started to have sound, the music score became a big part of it. The strange thing, though, about a musical score is, where is it coming from? It's not, there's no orchestra playing there. It's a convention that the process of the evolution of the art of filmmaking, the music score ended up being a very, very important part of it, and it still is.
Now, I actually sat in for one of your lectures when you were showing the documentary and how the music scores, or film scores rather, actually affect silent versus when you actually add it in there. And you did mention that the process of creating a film score is actually more of a craft instead of an art. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, music composition for people sitting in an audience in a theater or an opera house, that's an art. There's no other reason except as people are perceiving the music, and they're sitting there rather passively, and the music is playing, they're taking it in. A film composer, I call it not an art but a craft, because I'm part of a team of people, editors and cameramen and soundmen and negative cutters and directors and actors, and all those things go into it. And you are only a part, a support system within this framework.
Right, right.
So it doesn't end up, in my mind, becoming an art because you're not front and center.
Right. I mean, some people wake up in the morning and they just have the urge to do, what it is they want to do, and people wonder why. But that influence has to come from somewhere. Where did yours come from as far as making films? I mean, film scores.
Well, I'm a very lucky person in that I have a source within my being that I can write music constantly. It's always there. It's like when I sit down in my studio, it's like a tap I turn on. And I leave it on until the end of the day, and then I turn it off.
So where was your first job? Your first prime mover, who was that?
The first film?
Yes, your first film scoring job that you had.
I started as a singer-songwriter, and I got a reputation fairly early on being able to write really cool songs about really dull subjects. For instance, one of the first films I scored was for the state of Nebraska on the safe use of pesticides for farmers. And it's not a pretty grim subject.
Yeah, I mean,
but
how
I wrote
did that go?
film.
How did that work for you?
I wrote this song that went mites and ticks and skunks and slugs, weeds and weevils and hundreds of bugs, crawling up the cornstalk, going underground, chewing and ruining and flying around.
I mean, it's catchy too.
Yeah, it's catchy. It's not the greatest song in the world, but it wasn't the most interesting. But what people were asking me to do is take their documentaries, write a song that kind of fit the documentary, so that there was more, it'd be more entertaining.
Right, so it's not even just feature films that you could have film scores in, also documentaries.
Absolutely.
Maybe commercials, what have you.
All kind. I mean, there are live theater I've done.
And, I mean, I'm sure it's like an enduring process. I mean, I can't do it overnight, can you? I mean, how long does it usually take to develop a film score?
Well, it's that one of the challenges of being a film composer is the lack of time that you're given. Film composers sometimes have to write 50 cues in 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes you have months to do it. It really depends, but if you're not the kind of person who is willing to stay up really late and meet deadlines. It's very deadline-oriented kind of business, because if you have a sound mix and the score is not ready for the sound mix, it just ruins the whole process.
I mean, is it possible for a film to have a bad film score?
Sure, absolutely. I see bad film scores all the time.
Wow, and I'm sure you've been in the profession for a while. Has there been any film scoring moments of yours that actually stood out as being, better than others?
I kind of leave that to the viewer. My attitude is I get the film scored finished, and then I'm immediately moving on, and I don't really spend a lot of time looking back on my work. But in this business, you have bosses, which are directors and producers, and the process is making them happy with what you're
right. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
If you get through and they've signed off on all your pieces, and you go in the recording studio and you record them and they sound good and technically they're fine, then that makes me happy, and I'm on to the next one.
I mean, so I hear you're also a teacher at Lehman. Do you teach film scoring?
Yeah, I teach 2 classes here. One is called Defining Moments in Film Scoring History for non-music majors, and that we go back to the beginning of the craft of filmmaking and go all the way through present day. However, I also am teaching the history of music, because you can't understand film scoring without knowing the history of music.
History, the basis.
Right. Back to the 5 centuries BC, the Greeks, and how they came up with their system of harmonic scales, and then the Gregorian chant, and then the invention of opera in 1600, and then Wagner, and all these things led up to what we consider the modern.
And you actually studied at Lehman yourself.
Yeah, I did. I was here, I think, in the early '90s, and I was coming back to college to fill in some gaping holes in my craft, and I got the opportunity to study with John Corigliano, and who was one of my idols, still is. Also, I studied history of music, all sorts of different courses, history of jazz, and it really helped fill in a lot of the things that made me a better film scorer. And we had a wonderful time here. I was here for 2 years as a full-time student, and I'm very happy back here teaching.
Do you have any advice for any of the upcoming students who might want to take film scoring, or maybe history of cinemas, what have you?
Yeah, take one of my courses. If you're not a music major, take the Defining Moments. It's really interesting. You get to watch 2 films every week, and you learn a lot about film music. And we do Home Alone 2. We did Spider-Man 2. So we did some very old historic things, but we're doing very contemporary things too. And if you're an accomplished composer, you might be interested in studying this film scoring, which is actually for
between your time at studying at Lehman and actually teaching here, have you done any productions at Lehman, as far as on stage within the Lovinger Theater, what have you?
I haven't done. I've done conversations with Bill Hoffman. And I also, a feature film I was working on, we recorded some of the soundtrack in this room. So I'd like to do more. It's a beautiful facility. I mean, my classroom is absolutely state of the art in terms of it's the same gear that I have in my studio in my in Midtown. So
jumping a few steps a little bit, you're actually a musician. What was your first instrument that you actually got the opportunity to play?
I would say seriously the cello. I started when I was 8 years old, and I still play the cello, and it's a really, really valuable thing because I can just pick it up and play in my studio, and I don't have to hire a cellist. But at the same time, where I was studying cello and oboe, I also played drums and bass and electric guitar and singing and songwriting. So I've always had sort of a concurrent career in art music and popular music.
Right. I mean, you're actually in a band called the Bacon Brothers, with your brother Kevin.
My brother
and
Kevin,
a few other members. How was that? Did you play the cello in the band, or do you play something else?
Well, I do play the cello in a few songs, but mostly it's acoustic guitar and electric guitar, and then we have a 6-piece band, and my brother plays acoustic guitar and harmonica and percussion, and we sing and we write all the songs. And it's kind of I guess you would probably call it an Americana band. It's an electric band, but there's a lot of acoustic aspects to it and a lot of harmonies, and we love it.
And you were speaking earlier. You guys are actually going to Germany to tour, and you go around.
We had our last CD was released in Germany last spring, and we're bringing the band over for about a 3-week tour to play clubs and do press and stuff like that. So we're very excited about that. Should be fun. I mean,
it does sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I wish you tons of luck on that.
Well, thanks.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime, anytime.